Hi, Rodrigo.
Alex?
It's great to talk to you. We're here to talk about agentic AI, the buzzword of the event this year. I think first, maybe we should lay some groundwork. When I say agentic AI to you, what does that mean? What are we talking about?
I think agents, to me, basically, it's the evolution of where AI is going. You're turning these very large models into very task-specific, very agent-like models that can perform a certain task. So you make it very task-specific, very purpose-built, and you deliver a particular outcome just for that one task that you wanted to create.
So at SambaNova, you work in this space specifically. So you're building racks, you're building the whole hardware in order to deliver this, but in a sort of a very specific kind of way. Can you describe it a little bit?
Yeah, so here's a challenge. If you think about ChatGPT and the large models and what people are using those for, the beauty of it, and this has been around for a few years now, that an amazing model that does a broad range of things. But one model can satisfy what most of us want to use. We can ask a bunch of different questions, and the same model can serve it. Now, if you move to the world of agents, what's happening? You've got any one company, any one individual may create dozens of agents. Right? I want something that reads a document. I want something that generates a type of email, a type of table. You have dozens of agents, and then those agents are further customized for your particular workflow. Now, how do we deploy in production hundreds, if not thousands of agents for thousands and thousands of people to use concurrently without the cost exploding? So what we've done at SambaNova is try to figure out how do we give you a much, much better way of servicing thousands of agents all concurrently in a footprint that's commensurate with the cost that the agents need to actually stay within.
Okay, so in order to build all those agents, I mean, your company makes something that is like purpose-built for these companies, because these companies, if I understand correctly, what's very crucial for them is that they want you to do something with their data.
Right.
But at the same time, they don't want their data going all over the world and going to all the different hyperscalers or what it might be. How do you answer that concern?
Yeah, I think you look, for the agents to be accurate, so you think about this, you've got a workflow. Anyone come, you've got a workflow, and you're trying to replace portions of that workflow. And so for that agent to be accurate, the most accurate agent is going to be one that's adapted, customized, some people call fine-tuned, on the data that the company has. Right? And so if I want to create an agent that's able to interpret all my contracts, well, I better learn it on all my contracts, not somebody else's contracts. And so for you to learn it, for you to deploy it, for you to actually then reference that private data, you need that to be secure. Right? You need to be in a place where you don't have to run the risk of those contracts or customer documents or whatever IP that you have gets exposed into an environment that you didn't mean to. And so it becomes so important because these agents are replacing flows, people or humans or machines that currently do those flows, and so the accuracy is paramount. And so you need to use the most accurate data you have, which likely includes your private and most secure data.
So how do you keep that data secure when you're trying to use that data in all these creative ways? It seems like the two might be a little bit contradictory.
Right, so one of the things that we did at SambaNova, we do full stack. We build our own chips, we build our own systems, our own racks, and we base it off of the most popular open source models out there, whether that's Llama-based or Qwen-based or DeepSeek, some people like. It doesn't matter to me. We use the best open source models, and we keep them up to date for our customers, that every time a new model shows up, it shows up on the platform that they're using. And so the most secure way to do this is sit that AI platform next to that data. And what I always say is, look, you spend decades certifying, verifying, making sure that the regulators are okay with the data sitting in a particular place. So why not put the AI model next to the data? Because you've already certified it. So if you're a bank, you're healthcare, you're government, you've already gone through decades of verifying if the data is secure in a particular place. Why move it? Why move it at all? Right? And so with SambaNova, what we decided to do is, can I create a platform that's of a certain size, dense enough, low power enough, low cost enough, that allows everybody to actually put a rack of that infrastructure next to where the data sits because that's the safest. There are other ways to do it. You can convince yourself that you can move the data. You can convince yourself you can secure it, encrypt it. You can do all sorts of other things. But the safest way is you take the infrastructure and move it inside your secure environment where your data has already been protected.
So keep it basically as local as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of companies are we talking about? Are you working with? I mean, is this range? I mean, you mentioned a little bit. I mean, are we talking like from banks, healthcare? I mean, what are we talking about who are looking in this space?
Yeah, I think AI. I've always said AI is a global everybody problem, right? I think whether you are there today or 10 years from now, every single company in this world is going to have to figure out how AI changes their business. Right? And so, but today, if you look at kind of where we are focused, we're really focused on enterprise and governments. And so, for people for whom data is their differentiator, data is important to protect because they're regulated, because they have to IP. They don't want their data trained into a model and somehow getting embedded into somebody else's model that then is actually resold to other people. So that's where we're focused. And so today, we have customers like Saudi Aramco. Right, you're one of the largest energy companies in the world, and we train 9 years of data into a model that's deployed 100% within their own secure environment. Why? Because they don't want that data to leave, right? Yeah. Banks, we're partnering with a bunch of banks, with the U.S. government. So anybody that has data that they want to leverage in their AI workflows, but they don't want to actually move or run the risk of that data escaping, that becomes a very, very good candidate for thinking about SambaNova as a solution.
Right. When we talk about agentic AI, we always hear that phrase, keeping the human in the loop. But if we're sort of intellectually honest with ourselves, part of the purpose of agentic AI is getting rid of the human from the loop. So how do you how do you negotiate that? I mean, when a company comes to you and says, keep the human in the loop, like what are they talking about? What can you do?
Well, I'll assert that we ourselves most of us have this experience now with ChatGPT. We are a human in the loop, right? That you can ask these models, these LLMs, to generate an email response for you in 3 seconds. Right? But you don't dare for that email to be auto-send. Right? We're not ready for that to be, hey, don't worry about checking with me, just go ahead and reply automatically. None of us are there, right? So what's the human in the loop is we take a quick look at what it generated, maybe we make a couple edits and we send it, right? And yet, in that flow of instead of having me spend 5-10 minutes composing an email, it took 5 seconds, and probably another 5 seconds for me to read it, there was already productivity improvement. And so I think you're going to see enterprises have the same experience. One might have taken 10 people, maybe 2 weeks to do. Maybe it takes a machine 30 minutes to do, and maybe one person to review and be comfortable with the result it produced, right? And so I think to me that's the evolution of it. Gradually, some things we're going to feel so comfortable with that the automatic response is fine. Right? But until then, you're going to always, in our society, change management is important. You still need a human to be accountable for whatever happened. And so you're still going to need somebody to be able to come in and say, well, that human is actually going to be the final yay or nay for a particular thing. But it may still reduce the amount of human effort by a significant amount.
When a human does the work, and let's say they screw up, and it happens, we humans do that from, your boss or whoever says, or the regulator, in a bank's case, sort of says, like, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
If it's an agent that's been doing it, an agent that may be using models that, some of these models, people don't even know how they're really working, even the people that created them, how can you sort of ensure that auditability, how can they say, like, how can they demonstrate how decisions were made?
Well, this is why I think if you look at the transition that we're going through right now, right, and over the last few months, we're going from, we see the world moving from this training models world to an inference world and agents world, right? You see this happening in a flurry, right? And people can talk about LLMs and the big models versus the small models, the agents versus the various other types of applications that people write. My belief, the agents will go into production faster. Why? Because the task is bounded and the proof is easier to do. right? If I were to sit here and say, well, I have an LLM, I want to put it out in production, you can ask whatever question you want, generate whatever document you want, and I will stand behind it. That's a harder proof, right? Somebody has to test, someone has to verify, and think about all the things that might come out of this, and what is the accuracy of it. Where if you say, I need an agent, that agent needs to transcribe, say, 20 minutes of every CEO quarterly announcement call and transcribe it into these 10 bullets. And I want to do it for 10,000 companies, right? Just the same 10 bullets, growth, risks, whatever. Just say 10, that's much easier to prove, right? You can put enough inputs, test it enough times. Does it provide the accurate result? And the human eye can test it, right? So when you bound the actual scope of what these agents can do one by one, you are significantly more comfortable that it's doing the right thing, and you can deploy in production. That's why you're going to see these agents going to production faster.
Right.
And eventually, these bigger and bigger models will also become production ready, but we have to feel comfortable for the exact reasons that you brought up.
Right, okay. Speaking of the sort of like the bigger large language models, I mean, you are working in a space where you have like the OpenAIs and the Googles and all working around you, innovating and trying to maybe do what you're doing. What's it like to be somebody like in that context, in that hyper sort of competitive context?
Well, it's competitive and collaborative. Like today, SambaNova, we actually use OpenAI's models as well. We use some of the Google open source models as well. To us, it's an incredible time to be in the tech world, right? If you think about kind of the collaboration that's happening, yes, in some areas, maybe some of the hyperscalers are competing, and et cetera. But if you look at any one of us, whether that's personally or professionally in an enterprise, the world's hybrid. It's already hybrid. You're using an AWS and a GCP or an Azure. You're using on-prem. You're using private data centers. You're using the LLM from this person, a smaller model for that person, maybe an open source model for this. It's a hybrid world already, right? And I think you're starting to see the AI ecosystem come in and embrace that day one. I think that's a good thing, to come in and embrace and create your ecosystem, assuming it's going to be a hybrid world, because you can't serve it all at once. And so SambaNova, we're just one piece of that. Now, for you who have data concerns, you need to be able to reassure your investors, your regulators, your CEOs and boards that data is private, data is secure, and I have a way, because I have an energy-efficient, cost-efficient way to deploy the fastest models in the world, then there is a play there for SambaNova, which we do in collaboration with some of the largest companies in the world.
As you innovate and as you try to stay ahead in this field, what do you put your priority on? Like, what is it? Is it the speed? Is it inference speed, or is it the amount of the latency? Like, what is it that you really are obsessed by?
Well, I mean, there are two things. My belief is today, if you actually think about AI, we're just in the beginning, right? The example I give people is like, what % of your day is relying on the internet? That's like 90% of your waking day is relying on having good Wi-Fi or good cell service, right? If you don't, you're paralyzed. Well, what % of the day today is relying on AI? It should be 90+%. Most of us are just in the beginning. And so if you look at kind of the journey we're on today for the next 10 years, you're going to have this acceleration of AI. But what happens? Today, we're already complaining about the fact that we don't have enough supply of chips. We don't have enough power. Energy is going to become the bottleneck for scaling AI. It will become we're out there talking about gigawatt data centers. A single rack of NVIDIA today, 140 kilowatts, is the equivalent of powering 140 homes.
Wow.
That's one rack. And you need 1,000 racks to actually do any reasonable scale data center, right? And so you think about what's the limiter. Basically, you're going to run into energy as the limiter, and countries and companies that have access to data centers, access to that energy, will get way ahead because they have the computing infrastructure to be able to operate their AI business, where the others are going to have to rely on outsourcing that to somebody who has it. And so that's going to be a really interesting part, and trying to figure out how do we fight that. And this is where for us as SambaNova, we're really focused on how do we democratize it so that it doesn't become a game only of a handful of large companies that can afford it. How do you drive the cost down? How do you drive the power down so that every company can, if they choose to, have their own infrastructure and have access to their infrastructure wherever they need it, sometimes in their own country, sometimes behind their own firewalls, and sometimes in large-scale, hyperscale data centers. It doesn't matter, but we're really focused on that, and that's a battle that we all need to continue to fight, because otherwise, AI is going to be really hard to sustain.
And so, I mean, I think you touched upon it, but it seems like this idea of sovereignty, whether it's a country or whether it's a company, seems really key right now. Is that something that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, you look at, well, I just got back from the Middle East, and if you look at the Middle East, and they're building these gigawatt data centers with all of this capacity because they want to be this center of AI for a big part of the world, and they're doing a phenomenal job. And, most of us saw kind of the president's, U.S. president, and kind of the rest of the tech world, go into Riyadh a couple of weeks ago. Now, if you think about most other countries, they're already at max power limit. You go to Singapore, there's 3% power left. You go to Japan, they're having power. Like if you go to Manhattan, right? We're trying to figure out how to deal with power, right? And so you have to think about this holistically. You have to think about it holistically, and you have to think about it early enough, right? And not react to it. And I think, as we're thinking about this, we're trying to figure out how do I take SambaNova technology instead of 140 kilowatts a rack today. We're doing faster on, say, a model like Llama or DeepSeek at 10 kilowatts. Now imagine if I can give you 10 kilowatts. Now, 80% of the data centers, existing data centers in the world, can support that. Now I can just take existing data centers, instead of flattening, destroying, and trying to figure out how to build a gigawatt data center that might take 18 months and hundreds of millions of dollars to build. You can just roll out the old gear, put the new gear in, and you're off and going. And so a lot of this takes engineering, takes time, takes effort. It's not just about what's the best, the highest performance number you can generate, but how do you do it in a sustainable way, right?
You travel the world, as you mentioned. I was just wondering, like, how are you seeing different parts of the world respond to the AI challenge? I mean, some people put more emphasis on guardrails. Some say, let's accelerate. Like, how are you seeing the world right now?
Yeah, well, so we're based out of Palo Alto, and so Palo Alto is Palo Alto, and Silicon Valley behaves the same way. It's all tech, right? No breaks.
Right.
All tech, no breaks, right? And so it's you got people trying to figure out what's the boundary, what can be done, and create and invent. And so you have that part of it. And then you have other places like, like I said, in the Middle East, there's just such a significant commitment to moving away from an energy ecosystem into AI. And so you see that kind of that investment. But here's what I'll say. AI is something that's going to transform every country, every company. Whether it's up or down, relative is unclear. Right? But you saw the internet do this for companies. Some companies that were nothing before, because of the internet, they became top of their pack. Some companies that were top of their pack didn't react fast enough to the internet, and they fell off, right? AI is starting to see the same type of response, right? That my advice to everybody is, you have to be involved, whether you're ready to take it or not. And sure, we have to think about the regulations. We have to think about guardrails, safety. We have to think about all of those things. But that should not be exclusive and not worry about the tech, because I think there are companies and countries, they're investing a lot, and they're not thinking about that investment to be a localized impact, right? They're thinking about how can we actually make a global economic impact with our investment in AI, and AI is the type of technology that allows companies to transform their relative position in very stable markets. Think of banking, right? You've got companies investing in this technology because they think it's their opportunity to go from where they've been for the last 25 years to suddenly be at the top of the heap.
Right. Is it sort of like, we close this up, but as the last question, is it sort of, where are you seeing where are the next 5 years? It's a typical one, but it's very interesting hearing the perspective from
Yeah, I think you're already seeing. So the biggest companies have already gone all in, right? If you see it, everything's moving to AI very, very quickly. It's a matter of pace. I think the regulated environments are starting to figure out, oh boy, right? We need to figure this out. Now, if you think about this, if you're in the cloud, you have many different choices. You can use SambaNova Cloud, you can use AWS Cloud, you can use various clouds. If you have a private on-prem situation, which many of you do, because if you think about it, the cloud guys have been trying to move banks and healthcare and other folks to the cloud for 25 years, and yet the majority of that private data still sits on-prem, right?
Yeah.
It's there for a certain reason, right? And so if you have needs that require your AI to be on-prem, you really have no other choice, right? So that's where SambaNova really shines. We're able to bring the AI to you. We can drop a DeepSeek or Llama model in one rack right next to your data, completely private, in a way that you just can't do it. And otherwise, your only alternative is to start convincing yourself that that data that's been resident for 40 years in your own data center is OK to move into a new environment with a new model that's talking to it. So I think those are the things that people have to start thinking through, because it will take time.
Just a little last question, because I think if you could just tell us the name SambaNova, where did that name come from? It's such a great name.
Yeah, I grew up in Brazil, and my co-founder, the previous company, he's Nigerian, and previous company named it after a Nigerian word, and this time, he said it's got to be Brazilian, and so I wrote down all these amazing Brazilian words that would be great for a startup name, and he looked at it and he said, well, this just looks like Spanish, right? And so if you want a word that's representative of Brazil, it comes down to two words. It's either samba or Rio. And so you have to kind of just take one of those words and play with that. Well, it's a new dance. It's a new dance.
It's a new dance. It's a lovely name for a company, especially in an innovation field that's trying to come up with new ways to dance and get us all to dance with technology. Rodrigo, thank you so much for that. That was really great.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the chat.
Thanks a lot.
All right, all the best.